No, I'm going tired.
Some parts of the road.
Yeah, speaking of weird roads, you know what road is we're gonna go past Elwood. Almost towards that Washburn.
That's
That was probably the worst road in the county, but it's finding.
All the way out?
Here, Rich. You just move your office in the front.
Yeah, we moved down for,
Gotta buy your
so we
office.
can work.
Gotta buy your office every day.
So we don't straight lines on our. What was that, like, health something or other?
Yeah.
Down there the other day.
So we're gonna do that, fix it up.
Short walk.
Unfortunately,
It's a short walk. Like,
They have a device plans in on Wednesday. Also, there's on the front.
What they're doing afterwards.
No, sorry.
They changed the mind.
So what's gonna be our icebreaker?
I can tell you that.
That's what I have.
Right.
Well, it's a run, it's a series of good jokes.
No, it's fine. I've done it.
I figured it was gonna be something.
Run home and change clothes.
Okay.
No saying we're neutral, but it's probably the same
So,
area. That's why my walk.
That's what it sounded like.
All right, 6:30, we'll open the City Planning Commission of August 10th. Kim, you got roll call?
I have it.
All right, in front of you is the approval of August 10th agenda.
It's sporty.
All right, it's moved by Commissioner Fawcett and supported by Commissioner Patterson. Or moved, yeah, right? All right, sorry. And in front of you are the minutes from the regular held meeting on July 13th.
Which number those minutes?
Oh, yeah. You asked for a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, a vote on that for the approval of today's, or the August 10th agenda.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And now, the minutes that are in front of you, the regular held on July 13th.
I will move those minutes.
Mayor Marquardt, and
Support.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Yeah. And now is the public comment section. This is for anybody that would like to address the commission, and you have 3 minutes to do so. And we will open that right now. Would anybody like to speak? And if you so, jot your name and your address, please.
I'm Christine Herrick. My address is 2146 Carriage Hill Circle. We're here on behalf of the building of apartments or condos that will be done to the east of us. We would like the City Planning Commission to consider changing the Newville Carriage Hill from apartments to condominiums. Reason being, if it's condominiums, there would be an association fee to help us pay for our roads, which we now pay for. The other reason is if there are apartments, we feel that the people that live in the apartments wouldn't be as concerned about their property as the condominium owner. Would the city consider limiting the number of units to be built? And that's because of the traffic on our road. There's only one road in, one road out. That road is maintained and paid for by us, the owners of Carriage Hill and Village West. Just last year, we paid $13,800 for a small portion of the road that goes in front of Carriage Hill condos. We also pay for snow removal and salting. Has a study been done by the city to the effect of adding apartments to our joint sewer and storm drainage systems? Village West has had backup in their basements, and Carriage Hill has drainage issues in our backyards. Has any approval been given to changing the elevation of the property? Our project is lower than the new project. Has the city considered weight limits on our roads? Again, we are concerned about heavy equipment ruining our roads that we pay for. Our board, Carriage Hill Condominiums, would like a response from the Planning Commission on these issues. Thank you.
Any others? Seeing none, I will close the public comments and move to the public hearing scheduled about the amendment section 7-24.03 essential services. Jason?
Good evening, planning commissioners. Again, I'm Jason Ball with Rowe Professional Services Company. The first item in front of you tonight for a public hearing is the proposed text amendment to the definition for essential services. We heard a presentation from the folks from the International Transmission Corporation, ITC, last month about the need for this amendment. Essentially, the change here is just to remove that term franchised. So there's something about when we present this, the strike through goes away. Don't know why. There's a line through that word franchise when we look at it in the other way. So franchise is going away. The other red text is being added. The purpose for this, as we heard from last month, and we did some more research on our end as a planning staff, is that term franchised utilities typically refers to utilities owned by a city or a local unit of government. And so in this case, the utilities are no longer franchised. So we have lots of utility installations in the city that are DTE consumers, and in this case, ITC, which is a separate third-party entity. And so removing that term franchise just clarifies what essential services provides. The other changes to adding to the wording are just clarification points. They don't really change the meaning. They just clarify that when we talk about public utilities, we're also talking about quasi-public utilities as referenced in the first portion of the definition. And then we're just clarifying that essential services shall not include buildings other than control buildings, so small buildings that house actual control elements that allow the utility process to function. We have 5 standards for reviewing text amendments. Again, as a reminder, in this case, it's the planning commission, you're making a recommendation to the city commission, you're not taking final action. The first of those standards is that the change is necessary to clarify a provision of the ordinance. In this case, it made clear to us that that is the case. We need to clarify this change. From staff's perspective, again, this word franchise creates issues for potential construction of new utility infrastructure. It just helps align our zoning ordinance with the way that utility infrastructure is currently handled today. Second standard, the change is necessary to correct a mistake in the ordinance. In this case, there's no mistake. The way that utilities operates changed from the time that portion of the ordinance was drafted to today, and so we're just updating the ordinance to reflect the way that it functions in 2023. The third standard, the change is necessary to implement a goal or policy of the master plan. That's not relevant tonight. The fourth standard, the change is necessary to improve administration of the ordinance or better serve the community. In essence, that's the same issue as number 1. We're just fixing this definition so that the utility can be updated and we get rid of this sort of legal gray area. The fifth standard is that in addition to those, we must determine the requested amendment is consistent with the city's master plan. In this case, staff can't look at any reason why making this amendment would represent any kind of inconsistency or issue relative to the city's master plan. As a reminder, unlike when you're considering a special land use request or a site plan request for rezonings, we don't have to check every one of those 5 boxes. Those are just 5 standards we need to review, and then obviously this 5th one needs to be met. So in this case, certainly from staff's perspective, that first standard has been met, and we're not doing anything that will represent inconsistencies with the master plan. Any questions on this for me? All right, thank you very much.
All right, at this point, we will open up public comments on this subject matter. Oh, if anybody would make wish to make a comment on this situation. Seeing none, I will close public comments. Anyone looking for discussion?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the proposed text amendment related to essential services of the city commission because it meets all standards in section 7-23.06.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think it was explained pretty clearly last meeting why this is necessary. I don't see this as a significant change to the city's ordinances. I haven't seen any problems with it.
Agree with you. All right, we have a motion moved by Commissioner Bostic and supported by Commissioner Schlenk. Is this a roll call vote or?
Mr. Ball, would you like a roll call or a voice vote?
You do roll call for all motions, right? Voice vote's fine.
We'll take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right. Now we are moving to our site plan review. Jason, take it away.
All right, so this is the second time we're seeing this proposed site plan. The planning commission saw it originally in June. The applicant then made a request to the zoning board of appeals to address the setback issue. The zoning board of appeals did award that variance. So that setback issue has been addressed. So in this case, the applicant is Carriage Hill Condominiums. They're requesting apartments. They're requesting to redevelop this parcel here. It's currently vacant. It does have a road that's been developed as well as sidewalks and utilities that were established when the rest of the development was originally built out. So this is the current development as it exists. It's a condominium development. All of the buildings in sort of the brown roof color were built originally. These gray roof color buildings were built later. And so the applicant's proposing to complete construction on this section of it's a different property. So this section, so the overall area. All the roadways are private roads. So everything on Village West and Carriage Hill Circle are private drives. This is the proposed site plan. The applicant's proposing the addition of 32 units, single story, a total of 32 units. When the plan was originally approved in 2004, it was double that because the units were each 2 stories. So there was one unit on top of another. So the initial approval was from 64. this request cuts that number of units in half. That's adjusted also. So we reviewed the application with the applicants. In this case, I think we won't go over in detail a lot of the sort of surrounding issues. We talked about those in June, but all the surrounding land uses are also multifamily or condominiums. They're zoned multifamily other than immediately to the south, which is commercial. That's the Armory. There are a couple of sort of minor outstanding zoning ordinance compliance issues that I wanted to run through with the planning commission to be sure that you all are comfortable with them and that we address them. The first relates to building appearance. So the applicant's proposing using LP siding. LP siding is an engineered wood products siding. That's per the applicant's information, as well as you can Google LP siding and find out that's what LP siding is. Wood is a permitted predominant building material per the zoning ordinance. Typically, siding has not been something we've approved, but wood is the approved predominant building material. That's what the applicant is proposing. I just want to be sure that as a planning commission, you all are aware of that and are comfortable with it. In this case, it does look like siding, but because it's wood and because of this finish, it's much more durable and longer lasting than your typical vinyl residential siding. Yes.
Sorry, so when you say engineered, I'm saying, does that mean it's fake wood or it's,
No, it's real wood that's been processed to be longer lasting and more durable.
Okay.
I'm sure the builders can speak more thoroughly to what that means and can answer any additional questions you have about that. Any other questions on that item for anybody? This is the proposed elevations. The applicant's color scheme, it's hard to see here, I apologize. Their intent is, as they stated, to match the new development as closely as they can. In terms of the building colors, the roof color, the roof pitch, the newer portion of the development, here is 2 stories, so there'll be 1 story. But in terms of color, this is sort of a gray color with brown tones. We're going to use the same color pattern and schemes so the 2 match. So these are proposed elevations. This is the front elevation, rear, and then the side elevation. You can see in the front we'll have garages. About a third of the way up is finished stone, windows, and then there are in the landscaping plan, foundation plantings along the building. One minor issue on the site plan does indicate that only trees within building footprints would be removed. That's great, we just don't need to know what the number of trees actually is, so we can confirm that they're being replaced. Given the amount of trees on the site, the amount of trees proposed to be added, our expectation is there won't be any issue with tree replacement, we just need to have that number so we can confirm it on the site. The last issue is the buffer zones. There's a buffer zone required on the southern property boundary because it is adjacent to a commercial property. Requires 17 canopy trees and 17 evergreen trees and 66 shrubs. In that area, the applicant is proposing 5 canopy trees, 12 evergreen trees, and 72 shrubs. It's not clear why they can't meet the buffer standard. They did propose in their plan to distribute the rest of the required landscaping in these islands they're proposing within the drives that provide access to each unit or sets of units. Remember last time we saw this, these were actually like parking spaces in the middle of these drives. Those have since been removed and replaced with these sort of landscaping units in each drive that provides access to different units. So the total landscaping exceeds the required amount, but it's not all in the buffer zone. And so we need more information from the applicant or some sort of demonstration about why it can't be put in that buffer zone in order to approve it. But I don't have any more information on that other than that's something we need to confirm. So, any questions on the case?
it's private road,
Correct.
correct? So, if you have, if 10 is a single condo, I guess, or townhouse, whatever that is, single resident, is that single garage parking for each one of those?
Correct.
Okay, so what happens if it's a 2-car family or they have a little party or something? because it's a private road, we being the city, would have no way to control any issues with traffic flow in those areas. Am I correct in that thinking, or would they still have?
So there's a two-car garage, plus depending on the driveway, there's space for at least 2 additional cars in each driveway. And then there's also some space in these areas where you pull in for potential on-street parking in areas between driveways.
Okay.
But the original plan had like 4 or 6 spaces here in the middle.
Yeah,
That was a concern from a safety perspective because of cars potentially backing out of drives into parked cars and just sort of
okay,
generally how that wasn't very clear on exactly how circulation would work in those areas.
yeah,
So this way it sort of clears that up, and also the landscaping medium, we eliminate the potential for conflict between this driveway and this driveway, because you've got to back out and pull around.
okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions on landscaping? One other minor issue on sidewalks and pathways. In this case, for a multifamily or commercial development, the planning commission has the ability to require additional sidewalks if there's some reason why the planning commission feels like that's necessary, given the density or use of the proposed development. And so in this case, the applicant's proposed, a sidewalk exists today around the inside portion of this loop. And there is a sidewalk that connects to the new portion of development. There is no other sidewalk on that village circle or Village West Drive. And so in this case, the sidewalk does run along the interior. The applicant in their new plan has proposed several crossing places where the sidewalk connects to the roadway, provide access to this set of units, and then one that merges to each one of these sort of driveways to additional sets of units. So there is access from the sidewalk and through the ramp down to the road, and then you can access that from those units. The planning commission does have the ability, if you feel like it's necessary, to require additional sidewalks on both sides of the street. In this case, because there is no connectivity for that sidewalk, we can't really get anywhere with it. From our perspective, from the planning department's perspective, the existing sidewalk, as it merges with the sidewalk here, is adequate. As a planning commission, you all can make another decision.
And the existing condo, Carriage Hill, is there sidewalks on both sides?
No,
It's just on one side.
it's just, I don't think you can see it really well here. It just ends right there. So there's no sidewalks in the rest of the existing development.
But there is a sidewalk back through the planned area?
Correct, it exists today, it was developed when the road was originally installed. Lastly, on lighting standards, we do allow the installation of streetlights that aren't downward facing, they're a streetlight, decorative streetlight. In cases like this on private roads, the applicant has to prove that those fixtures will demonstrate there will be no off-site glare or impact off the site. In this case, the proposed streetlights do match the streetlights that exist today. This is the photometric plan for the lighting of the road. These are the streetlights in blue here. The only streetlight I would think is potentially issue, is this one here, because it is pretty close to this existing building. And there's a window right there. And so we may want to have the applicant address how to avoid any glare issue on this property from that proposed street. Otherwise, there's a street light here, the other closest building is here. And there is another street light that's existing here on the corner. Otherwise, all the street lights are internal to the development. And those street lights don't have to be installed until they get through building 50% of the units. So in their plan, phasing approach, those don't get built until they get a couple of phases. The street lights don't get installed until they get a couple of phases. The last issue relates to waste receptacles. Because this is a multi-family development, it requires a dumpster. The applicants has proposed a location for a dumpster pad. that is requested not to have to install a dumpster because their intent was to have each individual unit have its own trash service. The ordinances provide a waiver if indoor facilities are provided. In this case, I don't know that this is an indoor facility. As I understand it, in the past, the planning commission has allowed for developments like this to not be required to have a dumpster. That's, up to you all in this case. The argument there is if there's individual trash service for each one of these things, this one dumpster just becomes sort of a nuisance. There is an existing dumpster for the current development.
Mr. Ball,
Yes.
so we have some members in the audience right now who live in this neighborhood. Can you guys tell us if you have a trash service that comes through with regular trash service? Do you guys have a dumpster yourselves?
Village West does not have, like Karen Hill does.
Village West has 3 dumpsters for our 72 units. Carriage Hills has the trash pickup on their street.
Thank you.
Because they have garages, Village West condos do not have garages.
Okay, thank you very much.
And so that existing dumpster pad for the current development is here. And so for staff comments, the assessor needs to clarify issue of easement to be sure that it shows access to all of the other private roadways. DPW want to be sure that there will be, clarify there will be tapping fees for each individual address. And our engineering letter includes some additional comments related to confirming how the roadway will be resurfaced. And some other outstanding issues related to final site grading to clarify exactly how that will function. You all are aware of our typical approvals, standards for site plan approval. In this case, the one issue that doesn't come up in zoning ordinance compliance, but is relevant to our standards, is site access, circulation, and parking. Because it is a private roadway, I think understanding from the applicant exactly what the intent is and how it will function in terms of sharing maintenance responsibility and cost for the proposed private, or their existing private drive, as well as sharing access would be valuable. I know in past discussions from the planning department with the applicant, they have made some additional sort of adjustments since we saw it last time. From staff's perspective, we're able to address those few remaining issues. The site plan does appear to meet all of our standards in the ordinance, as well as our site plan review standards. Any questions?
Questions for Jason?
I don't know if I missed it, I apologize, because I came in a few minutes late, but when you say they clarified the issue about how they're gonna handle the repaving, because my understanding from the past was that they were not planning, they're gonna be using heavy construction on the existing road through there, which is private, but they're not responsible for the part that they have to go through,
I'll let the applicant speak to that. We don't-
how they're gonna correct it, yeah.
I know they expressed to us that they had come up with some potential solutions to that, but I'll let them speak to that issue. I
Okay.
don't have a lot I can add to it yet.
Okay,
They
thank you.
should be able to, absolutely.
Right here?
Yes. Any other,
Thank you, Jason.
yes, you're very welcome.
Applicant, if you are willing to present, or I guess.
If you just want the lectern, I can pull it out for you real quick.
What's that?
It just feels a little awkward standing in front of everybody without a lectern. At least that's a lectern.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's get one with wheels on this, all right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure we have questions for you. So I guess I'll let you guys ask your questions first, and I'll either have the engineer or the architect answer the ones I can.
You could go ahead and identify yourselves too, please.
But my name's Brian Scott, 9797 Reese Road, Clarkson, Michigan.
Rich Van Dever, Brilliant Land Surveying, 40 Grand Traverse, Flint, Michigan.
I guess any of our commissioners have any comments or questions for the applicant?
Well,
I
would you
guess
guys like to,
my original,
sorry, would you like to address some of the comments that were brought up?
Yeah.
Mr. Paul?
So regarding the road, so the condo development has an easement for the road, so the first condo development went bankrupt and then a different developer bought the remainder of it. And then so in the deed, we all own the private road. All three people own the private road, not just this condo, that condo. They're all deeded together and have access and ownership. And our plan for construction is we want to hire, we're going to come in and zoom it, and they'll have the asphalt contractor come in and take, do a inspection of the road, the current condition. And then after each phase, we'll address any damages caused by, any construction equipment. And obviously, we'll be responsible if we cause any damage to the road, because it's in our interest to the road. And then the thing is now, right now, they all share in the road cost of repaving the road, the two condos. By adding these 32 units, it drives the cost of things like supply and demand. Now it's 32 more units helping pay for that private road exiting the property. And then we dropped the property down from 64 units that was approved before the recession hit in 06, and the property got paused. So it's actually will be less impact than before. Now, because it's only be 32 units.
All the new pavement of the new sections is not burdened upon the existing.
No,
Let's make that clear.
Yeah, that'll be part of me paying for that part of it.
Once the development's complete, and then normal maintenance, that's all divided among everyone at that point.
And all the, there'll be some heavy equipment there, but it's not gonna be as intense as people think, because a lot of the underground, a lot of the stuff was already put in. So it's like, probably the trucks probably weigh as much as the dump trucks that come in, or if they had a cement truck come in to replace a sidewalk or a garbage truck, or when they replace roofs, it's all gonna be that type of equipment. It's not gonna be like, even like when the bulldozer comes to do the grading, it'll be full with a regular, size of a garbage truck. They're not big excavators out there or anything, because all the underground was already put in back in '04. So, a lot of the big major construction was already done.
So it's slab on grade, it's not basement, so you're not digging huge problems, or you're not hauling out dirt and those sort of things.
yes, questions?
As to the actual current development that you're gonna do, obviously it's been paved already. It indicated, in Rome's letter that you're going to cap it when you're done, correct?
Yeah, so,
Cap on.
yeah,
So when you look at that, road the way it is now, there's some deterioration. So is there anything you're gonna do before you just cap it, or are you gonna fix the road that's there now because it's in bad shape?
yeah, so we'll go off the determination from the asphalt company. They might have to mill it all out, or mill a little bit, but, obviously we don't want to warranty, not spending all this money. We're not gonna just throw some asphalt in, we're gonna take the recommendation from the asphalt contractor what needs to be done.
Yeah, there's poor sections, what normally happens is you cut a certain area out, you undercut it, put in some heavier stone, recompact, repave, and then cap the rest. So, yes, your road's only as good as what's underneath it. So for sure you see any poor areas underneath the asphalt now, since you're trying to cap on it. And that base material that's there now is not meant to be a wearing course. So all these, it's been exposed for this many years.
Yeah.
It wasn't intended for that. It's not intended for that kind of
Yeah.
driving. It's intended to be underneath. It's coarser.
Yeah, it's a coarser base.
Okay.
Do you guys have any comments regarding the buffer standards on the southern edge of the property, and why you're not meeting the pre-required?
We'll leave on the buffer, Jeff can probably talk to that. He's the landscape guy.
Jeff Brannan's Creekwood Architecture. The reason for that is we needed 34 trees. In the last review, they wanted the trees at 30 foot on center. So if I put all those 34 trees at 30 foot on center, I need 1,020 feet of property line. And I only got less than 600. So I got the required number of bushes through there, and then we decided, what we thought would be to add the extra trees in those landscape islands, sort of. So then, when they grow up, it'll be a little bit more private. If you're not looking across the street at the house, it's kind of landscape. And that's the reason why.
And if I can add to that, you don't want trees growing on top of each other, because then they starve themselves out like 30 feet. It's like the standard distance. If you're doing 10 feet apart, then they die and don't grow that well.
So for what it's worth, Google Maps is an amazing tool for doing this. I was looking at the May of 22 picture of the southern property line there. Not only is it quite a ways away, there's a pretty good tree cover there anyways, separating the proposed build-out area and the commercial area to the south. And so I can understand why you did it.
That's
What about the lights in the window issue with the pre-existing building?
Well, you might be able to speak to that one. What I have.
Just keep bringing people up. That's
So,
Yeah.
we wanted to match, we could have did downward lighting that would have not been the glare,
Sure.
and we wanted to match the existing lights that are at the other properties.
Yeah.
So that's why we went with the other light to match what was already there. In fact, it's more architecture pleasing. Actually, the downward light was actually cheaper. We didn't want to have like that shopping center look. We wanted to look more like a home.
Is it possible to move it across the street?
Yeah, I can
do something.
and I can just kind of switch.
So I think if you've got on the other side of the street, it would work fine.
Yeah, because I've got one on one side of the street and the next one here. So I can just get those all around. Yeah. Have the same number, so the bookend would be the
Yeah,
same.
no, I'm concerned about that window, so I'm looking at it. I wouldn't want a light right outside my window either.
I have a question, but it's not necessarily for the applicant. So this is obviously going to be a private road. There was a question that was asked during the public comment section regarding weight limits on these roads. Is it possible to create a weight limit restriction on a private road?
I think the bigger issue is that, it's a private road. The city really has nothing to do with it. The homeowners who are already members of the private road, they can hire an attorney to get involved and kind of protect their rights. As far as the construction traffic, and even from the city's perspective, I'm not sure that we can do that. I'd be more concerned with these trucks dropping nails, up and down the street as they come and go, popping people's tires.
Well, and I wasn't thinking about the construction. Obviously, you're going to have to have construction equipment to do the development. I guess I was just thinking, we obviously have a weight limit for like big trucks like on Oregon, and there's a reason for that. But I just wanted to know if a private road is allowed to, if the city can enforce a weight limit restriction on a private road. So I think your answer was no.
Well, in addition to that, like these guys are saying, the underground's already installed. That's the big drugs. So this type of stuff is not going to be super big for us. At least not in my experience.
Thank you.
I just wanted to be clear on one thing. So the existing properties that have garages have their own trash pickup. The ones that do not have garages have a dumpster. These units will all have garages, correct?
Correct.
There you go. That's what I wanted to clarify on my side. Now, we have anything else in our trust plan?
I'm just trying to remember, if they access from Genesee Street to the condos, isn't that street that they have to use to get back there, a city street?
Yes, so the southern boundary extended to western, correct.
Yeah.
That's only a portion. Probably, I think,
Yeah.
right about to. Somewhere's either here, I'm not sure exactly when the public event.
Village West owns all the way to Genesee Street.
Right.
Village West
Okay.
condo
those are-
association, we own all the way to Genesee Street. And it is a private drive, and it's not deeded between the condos, it's owned solely by Village West.
And so for the record, I haven't seen the easement, I don't think anyone up here has, and even if we did, it's between them and the developer, so.
Oh, no, I was thinking if I didn't know it was owned by them, I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought the road actually intersection comes up to Genesee, that section right there was public.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question. Because you're on the other side with access off of Oregon. Oh, Village West, okay, I see that.
So I mean, the animal, the library administration building is right there, and they access right off that road. So it's possible, but I guess the bigger question is why is that important?
Just thinking that that was, what I'm thinking of is where the police used to be, or the vet, animal, that street there on, where, that's public getting back. And so if that was the only way they had to get in, that would have some regulation on what heavy equipment could use that road. But if they access the private drive, we don't have anything to say with the one that is owned by Village Labs, but the city does have some say over that part of the road. And I'm sorry, I don't know the name, do you? Do you guys know?
It's up there.
Is it?
I can't read it from here.
Village Drive, Village West Drive North.
Isn't it
part of?
I thought it's part of Village West Drive, it
Yeah.
just becomes private, I thought when you turn right off of that street.
No, we maintain from Genesee all the way back to the entrance to the condos. We resurface it, we
But
plow it.
Churchill owns part of it,
So this is not a public comment
private
time.
road in front of it.
So I guess the thing again, I'll say this, they have an easement agreement of some kind, and we're not involved with that. If they want to hire an attorney, they can deal with it that way. But, we're talking about the site plan, and I think we've addressed a significant portion of the questions I had.
I feel that, we did too, on that.
Well, but I want to follow up what you asked, because I think based upon what you said, I don't think there's a need then for a dumpster to be there. If they have their own garages there, then it would make sense they would have trash pickup for their individual sites.
Just to clarify, these are gonna be condos, right?
No, they're gonna be apartments.
Apartments.
Commissioner Benson?
Speaking again to the dumpsters, the only concern I would have is, what facilities are you going to have for site waste? The lawn clippings, et cetera, where are you gonna store that?
The lawn clippings will have a lawn care service that cuts the grass. They have a lawn care service out there cutting the grass now. And they mulch the grass and they do the cleanup, so all that all site.
Okay,
And we're gonna also offer recycling receptacles to, for one garbage, one recycling, probably to see the same, trash company at the other condo place use it that way. We don't have multiple garbage trucks coming in, we just want, don't want right off the road either, so we'd have the garbage trucks coming in, same garbage company that they use, but we wanna make sure we don't have three, it's already bad enough, there's two dumpster companies coming through on the road. We'll try to, not wanna add a third one.
So as an apartment complex, you guys are gonna have a management company kind of managing these units, is that what's in the structure? And so talk to me then just briefly about, I guess, maintaining the road into the future. Is there gonna be some kind of private road agreement, or is that what's already existing as part of the easement?
Part of the easement, there's already a private road agreement.
Help pay for it, I guess. is the main
You have to help
concern.
pay for it, and it's divided by all units from the three complexes, obviously. Once I put my road in, I'll be responsible for my section of my road from mine, but the road that everyone shares driving now, that we all share in the south. That's what's in the easement.
Yeah, that's what, I haven't seen it, so that's what I'm trying to get to, is if we're adding 32 additional payers, or however you're gonna structure it, you guys will also be responsible for the maintenance going out.
Yes.
Commissioner?
You can ask a question, yeah, go first.
Since these are apartments, are they all gonna be 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom?
So So 16 of them are gonna be 3-bedroom and 16 of them are gonna be 2-bedroom. And the floor plan is basically identical. We used, all we did was chop off the top floor. It's a demo floor plan of other carriage hill buildings that are built. Because all underground was in, so they're identical layout as those units. This is where the stairwell was going up. There's gonna be additional storage, to meet storage requirements. Where the stairwells were, if we had a second story, those will be now closets. That's the only difference in the plan from what was built before and so.
This can be market rate.
They'll be market rate. They'll probably be around 1,800 to 2,200 a month.
That's no 50% EMI. So thank you. Sorry.
No, this question, thank you.
So I had a question about, there was a question about elevation and grading and drainage issue. In the letter that, and this goes to Jason, in the letter from Rowe, it says that the grading design submitted is considered preliminary. And then it goes on to talk about the things that there are details relative to grades, sidewalk ramps, building corners, garage doors, and proposed swales, which will be required prior to approval, but it says this item has not been addressed. So have you gotten any more update on that particular issue regarding whether there's a grading issue from one condo association to like this new one?
Yeah, so in this case, we have not gotten final grades. Our understanding was there was very limited site work that was going to happen other than the building sites being installed, and that was why we didn't get a full grading plan of the site, because we aren't planning on grading the full site, we're just installing the buildings. So the applicants continually, in their response letters, said that those final grading plans would be provided before a building permit, but they were waiting to get through the site plan process to do final grading. They may be able to speak to that more. That's relatively common in a case like this where they are not grading the entire site, they're just putting foundations in and doing it from there, but they may be able to speak to that.
Yeah, there's catch basins, inlets, places in strategic areas now in the field where the units are supposed to be going. And I believe, if you remember right too, there was actually foundations placed in for future units that were now taken out and we put back in different, same location. So the grade was already established for those units in there. As far as the roadways and things like that, those are second phases. So the first phase will definitely be probably pretty much 2 grades. But that's there now. All the drainage will be sent to the storm sewer that was meant to handle it. So it's, again, it was all approved in 2004 to 2007 to handle all the water, to handle all the sewer, everything that's there. So again, we're not adding anything.
Thank you.
And that's where I can assure that it's accurate.
All right, well, thank you very much. Anything else to address or any questions?
So, Jason, did you want to get like an official consensus on questions and executive?
So just in your motion, as a finding of fact, you can clarify the status of the dumpster and wood siding. Would be helpful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the one discussion that we didn't talk about would be the siding. As a panel, not the commission.
No, I think
We'll talk about it.
seeing if the wood is approved.
I didn't see why not.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with it. They come up with new materials all the time. And these guys aren't stupid enough to get something that's gonna melt off the side of the building.
So if I could, there was just one more point to clarify on the landscaping issue. So typically the way that landscaping requirements met within that buffer is that the plantings themselves are staggered. So instead of all being in a row, they are in a zigzag shape. And so that allows you to fit that number of trees in, right? If it was in a straight linear line, nobody would ever be able to meet that buffer standard because it's always the same for a type B buffer.
That sounded odd to me, so thank you.
Yeah, so the reason for that is, the trees usually are in a zigzag shape and you can alternate or however you want to intersperse your canopy trees and evergreen trees. That's how you fit that number of trees within that required buffer and still keep your 30-foot spacing. on an angle instead of a straight.
Mr. Ball, are they allowed to count pre-existing trees that are not removed? as part of
Yes, there are options in the ordinance for what are called tree preservation credits that they can apply to those standards, and so that gets back to identifying how many trees are on the site, how many are going to stay, because that may also reduce the total number of trees required in that buffer, because they can use some of those tree preservation credits.
Is there anything for the clarification, Jason? Any other discussion?
So do we need to provide, because obviously they're proposing that it's a straight line, and that's why they couldn't figure out how you fit that many in a straight line. Are you indicating that it's required that they actually do the diagonal, and so it will fit in the line, and we should be approving the exact number of trees that the planning department has said?
So correct, so I mean, if the issue here, so we have a new waiver option in the ordinance, right? That if there's some sort of unique issue with the property, the planning commission can grant a waiver from landscaping standards. If that 30-foot issue was always the case, nobody would have ever been able to meet that type B buffer standard, and you all have implemented that buffer standard over and over and over and over again, right? So in this case, there really is nothing unique about the property that prevents that standard from being met, other than to Mr. Womack's point about there being existing trees on the site, that if those are preserved, there may not need to be as many trees installed. That's kind of up to the applicant. So I think in this case, it's your standard motion about just being sure that landscaping meets the standards of the ordinance. And we can do that administratively. It's just a matter of counting trees and then doing the math on tree preservation versus new trees being installed.
You're seeking a motion?
Aye. One discussion, one motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the site plan requested by Action Companies LLC and Brian Scott. Is it Brian? It should be Brian. Is it Brian?
No, it's Brian.
Brian, I'm sorry, that was a misspelling. LLC to construct a 32-unit multiple family development located at parcel ID L20-93-304-04000 because it meets all standards on section 7-18.04, contingent upon the applicant addressing outstanding items related to building appearance, sidewalk, lighting, which will be that they relocate the light across the street, so it's not too close to that existing building, and that there not be a required dumpster because there are all attached garages. And that we are, in regards to the building appearance, we believe that the wood, what's it called? LP siding is consistent with our ordinance.
Use plastic sidewalk is acceptable.
Is that item the bullet number 2? I forgot to say that. Or are you talking about something else?
No, sidewalk in the first floor.
Oh, yes, and the sidewalk, yes. And then also that the applicant has addressed all outstanding landscaping, he's not addressed all outstanding landscaping requirements, and he'll need to meet what has been presented by the planning department. Except for those trees that will not be removed, which they will get credits for. I'm sorry, that was really weird.
No, I would agree. Mr. Ball, do you think we need authorization to make that determination?
No, I think that's something we can do administratively.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Are you asking for administrative approval on the landscaping for tree credits and all the other stuff?
Correct. That's something we do frequently, and we're very comfortable with it.
We got a motion on the board by Commissioner Bostic. Any support?
I'll second that awesome motion.
And it's seconded by City Manager Womack. And is this a roll call vote, or is this
Besides,
Not normally, no.
Okay. Well, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right.
thank you, everybody, for coming out.
Thank you. All right, now we are to section G, other business. Jason.
We had a couple of things come in over the last month that were not on your agenda. We wanted to run past them.
You want to wait 1 second before?
Sure. Let everybody figure out.
You good, Jason? That's good enough for you?
Absolutely, I can do that.
I know you got a good job there.
So we had this issue come in, we had an application come into the planning department about 2 months ago for new electrical vehicle charging stations. In the past, we, as a planning department, have just dealt with those via our regulations for accessory structures and for our standards for screening mechanical equipment. It hasn't been an issue today, although we've only had, I think, one other application. And so in this case, the issue that came up is that if we do that and we look at them as accessory structures, an electric vehicle charging station would not be allowed in front of the office. And so going forward, as electric vehicle charging stations become more common, the most obvious place for those are parking lots, particularly parking lots for large retail stores, and almost all of those parking lots are in front yards. So with that understanding, in the past, our attitude on this has been sort of wait and see. We're kind of to the point where it's, our recommendation is that we stop waiting and we make an amendment to the ordinance. So in your packet, there was a memo from us that referenced some information from SUNCOG, the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. They've done a really nice job just compiling information about how communities are handling this. This is a map from the U.S. Department of Energy that shows the location of electric vehicle charging stations. They show up in a weird color green. The green dots on here are current public charging stations. So there's one here in Davison. There are some down here in Lake Orion. There are some in Flint. But once you get past Davison, there are no electric vehicle charging stations in here or anywhere sort of in the surrounding area. So it makes sense that we're starting to get some interest for installing. So based on that map, here are some examples of electric vehicle charging stations in those places. So this is the one in Davison. It's behind a bar. It's a single charging station that feeds 2 spots. You would never know it's there unless you knew that it was there. This little orange one here is in the Flint Cultural Center. This is the Flint Institute of Arts back here, I believe. And so it's, again, set back from the roadway. It's at the end of a parking lot. Again, you don't really know that it's there unless you know that it's there. And then these are Tesla superchargers in the parking lot of the Meyer and Swartz Creek right off of I-69. So you kind of have like the 3 different versions of how this can look. The one thing to point out that we've seen in our application that often come along with this is a really big transformer box. And so as we think about mechanical equipment and aesthetics, that is something to think about. Is if it's a large installation, you know, here you have the transformers that are just sort of hanging out in the parking lot. Here with the Meyer, there was an attempt to screen those transformers. A couple years from now, once those trees get bigger, they'll really be well screened. Today, when we have things like generators installed, we require the same kind of screening you see here. So what we wanted to hear, so in addition, we looked through examples of ordinances. There are about 35 of them that some kind of listed. And so we looked through about a dozen of those to kind of pick out key items. And so we wanted to just sort of get your take as a planning commission on some of those key items, and then you all can make a decision about whether or not this makes sense to initiate a text amendment on or not. So a couple of key things to think about if we decide to add an amendment to the ordinance we wanted to get your feedback on. So there's a spectrum to EV charging just like to everything else. You can allow for EV chargers. You can incentivize EV chargers by giving credits for the number of parking spaces you get, or we can require them. Some communities are requiring the installation of EV chargers now in the parking lot, or being sure that there are spaces that are EV charger ready, meaning the conduits in the ground, but no chargers been installed yet. So we kind of have that spectrum of options. to think about as a planning commission. My assumption is for the city, we're probably at the place where we want to allow for them, but not necessarily require or incentivize yet, but I wanted to hear your thoughts. Second issue is how we consider them relative to existing required parking spaces. Is a space that gets an EV charger treated like any other parking space? Or does it take away from the required parking spaces, or how do we want to handle that? Again, different communities handle that differently. And lastly, thinking about mechanical screening and placement and equipment for transformers. We want to have the same standards for EV charging transformers that we do for any other, or would we want to provide some flexibility for EV charging given kind of difficulty in siting relative to parking lots and front yards and some of those things. Other ordinance things that we will deal with regardless of those first three, because we just need to, are one, we're only zoning for fast chargers. We're not talking about chargers in homes, right? That's an electrical installation issue. That's not something that would be relevant here from a zoning ordinance perspective. The rule can include some basic requirements for ADA accessibility and layout for EV charging spaces, just to be sure that we don't create an issue. For example, we have to be sure wherever that charging space is, that it relative to the building, you can get there in a wheelchair. If there's a curb stop or something between that charging space and the building, we create an accessibility challenge for somebody. Make sure we don't have an impact on existing sidewalks or pedestrian facilities, thinking about equipment height and size, limiting total height, making sure they aren't really tall and really huge, particularly if they're in front yards. Being sure that there are standards for installation, maintenance, and removal. So if the charging station is defunct, it no longer works, being sure that we can have it taken out so it doesn't end up being blood. And lastly, any other concerns that from you all as planning commissioners come up just as we're sort of starting to think about this. So I guess first I just want to hear from you all kind of any concerns or thoughts that come to your mind right away before we talk about whether or not we want to initiate an amendment to the ordinance. For additional information you'd like to have, yes?
Knowing nothing about those, how many cars can one station have plug into?
So both of the ones that are single pedestals are 2 spaces. So there's sort of 2 chargers that come out of either side of that go to a space on either side. Typically, that's how they work. The chargers are spaced kind of in the middle of a parking space line, and one charger feeds 2 spots.
So will we consider having one of those handicap accessible?
So what some ordinances do is they put a standard that says if you're going to install more than like 3 or 5 spaces, one of them has to be handicap accessible. My recommendation would be what tends to happen with those is they have to be wide anyway, because EV chargers aren't consistent where they are on cars. Some of them are on the front, some of them on the back, some of them on the right side, some of them on the left side. And so to access those, you may have to back in and pull out. So generally those spaces are a little wider anyway.
To accommodate that.
Right. But being sure that you can get a wheelchair from that space into the building, I would want to make a requirement for any EV parking space. That shouldn't be an issue necessarily, but we want to be sure that's a consideration. That's
Figure out.
thought of.
Well, I think obviously the EV stations is very much needed. We've been talking about it on the city commission level for a good couple of years. It does bring in travelers for one, but also some of our various businesses are going to be wanting us. I already know of at least 3 mothers that have it, surrounding us. So obviously they're making this kind of part of their plan for servicing their customers. And I also understand that for various dealerships, and that really includes, I don't know, do they have EVs for motorcycles? I don't know where that's at, but various dealerships are in need of this as well because they have to have this up and going, of course, way before they can even order the cars.
Right.
Which is probably a year to 2 years down the road for them. You have to order and then show them.
Yeah, and those are the requests we've gotten so far from
Correct.
And so, they're going to be first because they're selling the cars and they've got to provide that infrastructure. But I think it's reasonable to expect that we'll see other requests down the road. I think the one thing that I will say just about this that's important to think about is we don't, the analogy I heard used about this is it's kind of like cell phones 15 years ago. Nobody thought we could do the stuff we do today with a cell phone 15 years ago. You make calls with it, right? So the sort of way that electric vehicles pan out, if they pan out the way that it seems like they are, the way charging infrastructure functions and works 10 or 15 years from now is probably going to be really different from the way it works today. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm guessing, this little thing behind a bar won't be the main way you charge your car. So, any ordinance we make, we want to be sure to be flexible with and not be sort of overly restrictive on what we know today, because chances are it's going to change.
Mr. Ball, my biggest concern is that we haven't done this already. This is not new. Teslas have been around for a decade. I know that the Ford dealerships were going through this process 18 months ago, because I had a Ford dealership in my previous community who was eager to get this done. To the point, I'm a little disappointed that we're just getting to this now. So, we're talking about being business friendly, we're talking about being citizen friendly, who have electric cars, and that map that you showed with nothing anywhere near look here, that's shocking.
That is
Shocking. I'd like to see this sail through. I'd like to see a draft ordinance at the next meeting, and I'd go so far as to say we should hold a special meeting before a month is up, because we shouldn't be waiting 60 days to make a recommendation to the city council on this. This is not that complicated of an ordinance. I think we could probably move it along faster than the 60 days here and 60 days at the city council.
You may not be ready for incentivizing, but have you looked at what other examples in Michigan, how do they get incentivized? What are they offering?
Yeah, so the most common incentive is that you get a reduction in parking standards. So you add one EV charging space, you don't have to install 2 regular parking spaces. That's the most common and simple incentive. Some other places do some things in terms of allowing for increased density or things for developments. We don't have those kinds of regulations here today. So the most obvious incentive would just be allowing a reduction in parking standards if you install EV charging stations. The other thing that a lot of communities do now that I think makes some sense, if you think about kind of that spectrum, is on new parking spaces, or new parking lots, new developments, they're requiring some spaces to be what's called like charger ready, which means if you've got the ground torn up already, we're going to require you to put in conduit to a certain number of percentage of spaces, not actually install the pedestal. But down the road when that comes in, now it's just an installation instead of having to put up the concrete in the ground and everything else.
I think that makes sense. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And that should be incorporated into our ordinance and other places that require that when places are developing.
And it's one of those things where we can incentivize it, right? So maybe that's an incentive and it's a reduction of 10% of your required parking spaces or whatever. I think all those things are options that we can present to you as a sample ordinance, and you all can make decisions about that before you send it to the city commission.
Commissioner Bassett?
Yeah, talked about this previous meetings. I do think we should require EV charging for multifamily developments, apartments, etc., rather than incentivize, because they're going to have tough time usually meeting parking requirements as it is. So I think we just should. People are going to want to have an electric car and live in an apartment. So I think that should be a requirement, and I would lean more towards incentivizing the commercial industrial properties.
My first thought when you brought it up was incentivizing is one thing, to require, if it's an already existing parking lot, to do that, what would it be the cost?
So I wouldn't recommend requiring it for existing parking lots, right? If somebody's going to
Right.
restrike their lot, you shouldn't make them tear up a bunch of, well, it's up to you.
That's what he was just saying.
No, so I guess
Right.
what I heard Commissioner Patton say was on a new development.
Okay, incentivizing.
Yeah, so if there's a new development, maybe we come up with some standards related to the number of units, or the type of unit, right?
Okay,
To require some of those options for charging. When it's residential too, a lot of times you're not talking about fast charging. You're just talking about being able to charge your car overnight. which is a much less expensive, much less sort of intensive electrical problem than these fast chargers, which are high voltage and all of that.
Right, but have it in place,
Yeah.
because tenants are not going to do it.
But that's all under residential, we're talking about businesses, right?
Well, we're talking about a new EV charging ordinance for the city. So adding those requirements for residential is something we should consider at the same time if we're going to also consider it for commercial would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I wasn't talking residential, I'm talking apartments,
Mhm.
et cetera.
Multi.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, not single family residential, not requiring installation in, anybody's home or a garage. People can do that as they so wish when they get an electric vehicle or if they move, they want to spruce up their garage or their driveway, that's an option.
Very common also for hotels to have EV stations.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much in chicken, but I've seen some, many of them.
Yeah, I
And it
mean,
makes common sense, I mean.
and
it's-
in commercial places, you're looking at places that people are gonna be there for a while, right? So
Yeah.
Meijer stores, Target stores, grocery stores,
That's what
hotels,
Mayor's doing.
places you're gonna be there for an hour or two. Some restaurants, some small towns have done it in public parking lots as a way to, maybe encourage people to go park and, go buy an ice cream cone or whatever else while they're there. Those options all exist. I think the main thing is just being sure that we have the standards for removal and maintenance. Because in some of those places, what's happened is there's been installations and then the company that was going to manage it went out of business or whatever else, and now nobody knows who to call to fix this EV charging station that's there. So we can be sure to include some of those standards so we don't end up in that place.
Okay.
So you're gonna require them to put it in. You're not gonna rely on market-driven statistics. It's their choice to do it. You're gonna make them do it.
I'm giving you guys that option.
But
So, I mean, I think I can see both sides of that coin.
No, I'm with you. I don't want to see us force them to put it in, but, part of what the city does is we put the conduit in.
Is it a conduit? Makes sense to me. Why not put the conduit? That's pretty,
That's a
simple.
minimal cost. What goes
Yeah.
already with
that way it's there in case you have to rip it all up if you want to, do it later.
yeah, if it's my business, yeah, absolutely. I'll put the conduit in it because it's pretty cheap to do, but it's my choice. Why would I have to do something, made to do something? I don't agree with it. I mean, you need a water line, you need a sewer line, you need a phone line, you need all these things.
We just got done requiring people to put trees in, of course, and move the street light.
That's something else, but
We are here trying to protect the rights of the citizens and make our city look nice. Installation of a conduit is just a tiny little fraction of cost, and we're preparing ourselves for the future.
I was gonna say, I don't know if it's taking a cynical position, but there may be reasons why there haven't been a lot of installations. For instance, the electric batteries that catch on fire, they have to figure out how to solve that. I think there was something on the news just the other day where a ship that was totally lost because of, and they're not made here in the United States, so there's still some issues. But I think it's a good idea to take, I don't see requiring it, but I think incentivizing and having something in place
Yeah.
is a good idea.
Well, we had this discussion at a staff meeting a couple weeks back, and our fire chief talked through that issue. What he did say was there's lots of examples of issues with electric vehicle batteries. So far, none of them have been when they've been charging at one of these stations. So far, the issues about charging at fast charging stations have not really come up.
Yeah,
But-
no, I see the customer demand. I mean,
Yeah.
why do you want to buy something that's for nothing?
Well, I guess what I would offer is we can draft some language that gives you some options, right? That sort of illustrates that spectrum between, allow, incentivize, and require. As a planning commission, you guys can kind of evaluate once you see it in black and white, what feels appropriate and what doesn't. My suggestion would be that we just make it part of our parking lot design standards, we add it there. Because 99% of the time it's gonna be part of the parking lot.
For commercial.
Yeah, and then we could look at requiring it in new parking lots or incentivizing it in new parking lots over a certain size. Right, so if I'm gonna install 10 parking spaces, we shouldn't make somebody install a EV charging space. If I'm gonna install 200, then maybe incentivizing or requiring makes some sense. We do that now with things like landscaping islands and that kind of stuff, depending on the size of the parking lot, you gotta do
The
more
number.
landscaping islands.
The number of handicap parking spaces based on the number of.
Right, we do that a lot now with, requiring things based on the sheer number of spaces, so I think we could come up with a similar formula, and other communities have, come up with a similar formula based on the total number of spaces. So at this point in time, the question is just whether you all would like to make a motion to initiate an amendment, or if we want to sort of hold off on that.
Will we call it an amendment or a discussion to bring back?
So those are your options. You can initiate an amendment, which means that we'll plan a public hearing and bring you draft text. At that public hearing, you can recommend the amendment to city commission as presented or with changes, or you can talk about it some more. But as a planning commission, in order for us to move forward on this, you all have to initiate that amendment to the ordinance.
Make a motion to initiate that ordinance.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
No, I'm totally in favor. I want to see this accept.
And I did have, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I hate to speak out of turn like as a reporter, but just, I know there are charging stations in this county. There's at Land Steel Park, right by the city office in Inlet City, and in North Branch. And those cases, we reported, there was conscious decisions to put on public property. The city said, Inlet City said, we're going to do this in our property, we're going to start there. North Branch, the same. Columbia Bill's looking at it, so is Elmwood, on their own property.
And the city book here is also doing that. We just haven't got the tools. Right? This is for commercial purposes. So, okay.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, sir.
I'm a Jeff too, so.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know the experience that we had in Durant. We have one, charging station in there. And what you need, I didn't know this until all of a sudden we were having problems with our charging station because our Wi-Fi wasn't powerful enough. Because you have, you on this one anyways, you take your phone and you hit the QR number and then it comes up on the screen and people weren't able to use it because we didn't have strong enough Wi-Fi. So we had to boost that in order to do that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Issue that we had.
So just so we're on the discussion, obviously we're pushing it through to initiate the amendment, and I think our consensus here is to 100% allow, and I'm all about credit. I think that we worked out the best, so I think we're all on that. So are you going to bring us different options, or are you going to kind of write it like that, or?
I'll bring you some options
Okay.
that relate to that issue around, allow for, incentivize, or require.
Okay.
And then we can look at some different options around, incentivizing the infrastructure to be put in the ground versus, incentivizing or requiring the actual charging station.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. And to go back up to some managers, Monax, is there a way of speeding this up, or is?
So we have to publish a notice of a hearing, so we have to pick a date, and that notice has to be published in the newspaper at least 15 days before that hearing.
There's really only, I just looked at the calendar, there's really only a week to buffer between the existing meeting and moving them up due to the notice requirement. So you'd only be saving a week or less.
There might be some ways to save time if city commission.
All right, well, we have a motion and support in it. Any more discussion? Roll call, well, we can do a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. You're right.
One more text amendment thing, this one is incredibly simple. It's just a cleanup since we were doing another one. We have a section of our ordinance that says all parking lots shall be illuminated. Fixtures shall be high-pressure sodium lamps or metal halide. Those are all LEDs now.
Yes.
So we'd like to just kill that sentence and get rid of it and whether it's an LED or some new fancy thing in the future, it can be whatever we desire.
So, Mr. Ball, I did a similar ordinance in a previous community. We actually prohibited sodium vapor lights. Those are those hideous orange lights you guys see all over the place. And so what we did was, I think it was, must be LED, must be a certain color. I think it was 3,000 K and above, or other high efficiency lighting. Do you have specific language in mind other than just deleting that? Or are you expecting the market to kind of go with whatever's appropriate?
The latter, because whatever we install now, just given the change in lighting and LED over the last 10 years, whatever we put in, if it gets specific, my concern there is we'll have the same problem in 5 or 10 years. And so typically, I think we have good standards in our ordinance for the amount of foot candles that have to be illuminated in a parking lot. We have good standards for avoiding lighting off-site. And so however somebody achieves that, I think I guess my suggestion would be that we stay sort of agnostic to, but that we require them to, we stick with our existing standards around lighting that relates to things that really have to do with health, safety, and welfare. I mean, 10 years ago, LEDs weren't really a thing, right? And so 10 years in the future, there may be something else.
So looking for a similar motion?
Hey, yes, sir.
Okay, I'll make that motion to initiate an amendment regarding the section 715-05 D2A to remove the requirement for high pressure sodium lamps or metal halide.
Support.
We have a motion and support on that. Take a voice vote, or sorry, discussion. Take a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Now to training.
Last time, so we'll do a brief bit of training on the Freedom of Information Act and Open Meetings Act at the joint meeting on Monday. Make that as quick and painless, hopefully, as possible for everybody. Those aren't super exciting topics, but they're really important ones. And when they come up, you want to be sure to be professional as planning commissioners to go over that then. We also have our CES tentatively scheduled for October the 19th. We'll get more information out on that to everybody. Our topic's going to be the sort of development review process from soup to nuts. So if you're interested in that, we'll get more information on that. This list hasn't changed since last time. All of these trainings are still upcoming in September or later. Just as an FYI, these are the sort of relevant trainings coming up in the future. We did at MML's conference. I apologize, it did change. MML announced their conference date a couple weeks ago. It is the 18th to 20th. That's always a very informative and effective conference. It's also up in Traverse City.
Is the October 19th one, is that in the evening?
Yes.
Okay.
We usually do it at 6:30 or 7 at our office.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Jason.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we are to section J, Commissioner comments. Commissioner Johnson,
Pretty good.
Commissioner Bostic.
I wanted to indicate that, I'm sorry, I wasn't at the last meeting. I actually had texted Kim about an hour before the meeting, and I didn't know that, nobody knew why I wasn't here, and I wouldn't just not show up, but I had my basement flooded from my sump pump going bad when we had the power outage. So I spent all day actually cleaning up the water in our basement. And so I was a little exhausted by like 5:45, and I texted and said, if you need me for a quorum, I'll be there. But I didn't hear anything back, so I assumed she was good. And then I realized she never saw it, so I'm like, I want you to know that I would never stand you up and for not a good reason, so I apologize. Yeah, because she saw me, she's like, where were you? I didn't tell you. So anyway, and then I want to tell you that I will not be here for the next meeting because I'm gonna miss, because I really would like to talk about the ordinance with you on text amendment, but I'm gonna be in the Mediterranean for 2 weeks.
Jeez.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Out of the country.
You can write a few notes if you'd like, if I agree.
Yeah, well, if you guys get, if I have it ahead of time, I'll make sure I get my comments
That's somebody.
to
Yes.
Jason, yeah.
Commissioner Shea?
Oh, you're skipping him?
I was gonna, their titles.
Oh, I see, I mean, that's right. Put me in my place or nothing?
Commissioner Patterson.
There's nothing tonight.
Mayor Darrell. Mark Klein.
Just, thank you. I think it was a very informative meeting, and you did a great job, Jason, explaining everything, and you did a great job of running.
City Manager Womack.
Yeah, I thought the discussion regarding the unit development was excellent. I thought it was really well done. Jason, obviously, you do an excellent job every time. Yeah, I mean, I think the city has a long ways to go to be more business friendly, and we are good gatekeepers in that way. But I do look forward to, I know I shouldn't say it, but looking forward to modifying some of the things we do to be more business friendly. And I think that this EV charging station is going to be a good test for whether we can all kind of come to a good consensus for moving forward. In my mind, it's not that complicated. It's not that, shouldn't be that controversial either. So I'd like to see that one move forward pretty quickly.
Okay. Thank you, Janelle, for not being here and making me run two yearly meetings. Hopefully I didn't butcher it too bad.
Did an excellent job.
All right, and then we're at K. I hear a motion for you.
He declares adjournment.
All right, declare adjournment.
Or you do an excellent job.
What, did you join reading? No?
No.
We moved it to the rest.
No, it's the next
Because somebody got yelled at.
Oh, so I'm like, holy.
It's the lower level.
Sorry.
But it was originally, that's the email I got originally was.
Originally,
the
one
you
have in your email now,
verifies the location and the time. Right, I'm just saying originally it's signed, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be here, so I didn't see the new email.
Just at the door, like, pulling on, trying to get it out.
Yeah.
I didn't get that, just like I wanted to.
Ah, well, it's a pretty big email, because it's a big.
I got the email, I just didn't look at the location, because I thought it was.
I didn't think it was August.
You probably did.
No. And we should put some notices on the door that day for people who show up here.
Yeah.
It's at.
Oh,
Well, because this
And they're thinking that what's outside.
I mean, the press room get up there, it's, the vending machine.
So I know,
Yeah.
the members are.
It's at least my-
Oh, yeah.
So she's got to stay there.
5:30.
I'm trying to get that one.
So cold.
For your agenda.
And now I'm gonna die.
Yeah.